Hey, what's going on? It is Ryan, it is Kristin, it is Passing Notes, and today we're discussing owning notes versus owning rental properties and
the eternal debate.
And it's funny, it's kind of like that whole debate of owner finance versus rentals, and it's at the end of the day, it's like
That's actually the same conversation.
right, but at the end of the day, if you're a real estate investor, you should own everything, but for fun's sake, we're going to get into it.
That is the number one thing I get from like newbie real estate investors.
Which one should I do?
Well, no, they go, I want to own all of Texas.
Yeah.
Or I want to own all of Dallas. And I hear that and I cringe. I'm like, no, you don't want to own anything.
It's funny. It's like one of my mentor people that I call it mentors in the real estate game, Mac, the joy in his face when he sells something far outweighs the joy when he buys something.
You buy something, and I try to explain this to people, especially if you have any debt on it, any debt whatsoever. But if you own a house, that goes in your liability column. Everybody's like, no, it's an asset, it's an asset. I go, right, it's an asset until the roof has to be replaced, or the water heater goes out, or you have to replace the HVAC. I'm like, those are all liabilities.
Did you just read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I know, but it's looking at that liability or asset. An asset is a note.
Well, define liability versus asset, just because that's another eternal debate.
Thing. So for me, a liability is anything that has risk in it, anything that you're going to have to put money out that you weren't planning on. So when I was a landlord, I had to save like 30% in an account just to make sure that I had enough just in case an AC went out, right? And I had to go replace it the next day because my tenant needed AC. Mm-hmm. But when you're dealing with notes, you're not responsible for those maintenance.
Yeah.
So that's why I put it as an asset.
But you could also say in the same conversation, it's like, yeah, but once the note's paid off, you don't own anything.
You know what? Once my notes are paid off in 30 years, I'm not going to care. Because I have been actually profiting and making money and building wealth over 30 years.
Right.
For anybody who's a small landlord out there and they're just taking rental payments, you are working for that rental.
Well, it's funny because I just saw an Instagram post. It might have been a commercial. It might have been an ad from Pace Morby. And he was basically just talking about, he was shitting on the BRRRR Method.
I got to be honest, I love the BRRRR Method, but on the same, I see
but
why
what he
you
was
see
saying
it too.
in terms of like seller finance and how seller finance is prompted to basically take over the world,
I agree with that.
I'm not familiar enough with seller finance to have any dog in the fight. But my ultimate point to anything is you need to be multi-versed and all of it.
And that's accurate. So I had no rentals up until a couple years ago, when my accountant was like, I can't shelter all of this. You need some rental properties.
It's all about the sheltering.
Well, it's for tax purposes, yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't want any crappy rentals. Mm-hmm. I did that. I've been there. Why? So I can make a couple $100 a month and then go,
I own something.
And then, so I've got a tax write-off, but then all of a sudden, I'm paying out the nose for repair.
I think in a lot of ways, just to like deviate a little bit off topic, is you got to make sure as a real estate investor, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, business person, you're doing it for the right reasons versus the clout or look at me pound my chest. And the reason, well, first of all, there's always that game of, hey, look at me.
I own 20 houses.
Yeah, but I remember going up in Ohio. I don't know if you've ever spoken at the OREA con up there with.
I haven't been up there. I almost went up there with you that time. But
yeah. But I've been up there a couple times. But the thing is, up there, you talk to people and they're like, yeah, I own like 50 properties. And you're like, holy crap. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Those 50 properties are like $10 a pop versus a property here in Dallas.
So, right. So you can go up to Ohio right now, and I'm tempted to do it because you can go buy a house for $1,500.
But the ultimate point of me bringing this up is, if you're in this name game of, hey, I own this and that, Well, you go to Ohio, it's like, so everyone owns 40, 50 properties. Who cares?
Yeah, but I don't, here's my point. I don't
Right.
think anybody should own that many properties at all anyways, because they're liabilities. Yeah, okay, you can be a slumlord. Everybody who I've ever known who had like ended up with like several hundred properties, inevitably some of those were just crap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll rent it for a few $100 under market, and anybody will rent it.
I don't know if just because you own property you're immediately a slumlord, though.
Yeah, well, a lot of times deferred maintenance will go down. I mean, unless you're completely you appreciate on them.
I think ultimately it's hard for me to. I know I'm kind of being the thorn in this topic of conversation, but it's just like you got to do both. But I get your point.
I would not be doing any rentals, period, if it weren't for my accountant and tax planning team.
Well, here's the thing, though. If we had this conversation in early 2020, and 6 months later, somebody was watching this video, they're like, man, I should have listened to that Kristin Gerst. She's a effing genius. Because, yeah, if you held a lot of property all year and everybody's getting into forbearance and you're not allowed to evict and you're not allowed to collect payment, and most likely these people are going to get forgiveness. I forgot what that's not what it's called, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Well, they've already extended. CDC extended to the end of January.
Right. But my point is if you're not a bank and you're just mom and pop, I own 3 houses.
Right.
Well, those 3 houses really are liabilities at that point in time.
Oh yeah.
Because the bank, they're not looking at you saying, "Oh, you don't owe us money because you're the big bad landlord. You're the investor. You got everything."
Right. And so investors are not given the same leeway that homeowners are.
Yeah. So again, if this is early 2020, in mid 2020, this video would be like, "Oh, you're a genius." But in normal times, owning stuff has its value.
Everything has its value. But people have to go into it and be smart. You know, even in, I don't know if anybody's, watching Captains of Industry right now or whatever the thing is on CNBC, but Donald Trump was over leveraged in the 80s. Mm-hmm. He just kept borrowing.
Yeah.
If banks were lending him money, he was borrowing. And so if you are, up to your eyeballs in debt on all of these rental properties, say to 80% loan to value, 75% loan to value, you're going to find some months that are unsustainable if you are living hand to mouth.
Right.
And there's a lot of investors who do that.
Well, it's always an interesting conversation because when you're talking to newer investors and they're like, man, I've got 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, 300, 500,000 in debt. And you're like, cool. And you talk to an established investor and they're like, oh, shit, I've got 5 million.
No, yeah.
You're like, holy crap.
No. And
yeah.
I mean, I'm a big believer in borrowing money to make money. And I always do that. Totally cool with that. But it's the type of property you have. And if you are heavily leveraged, you're not saving a lot and all you have are rental properties. Because for my notes, that's my profit. So every month that comes in, I can spend every dollar of that if I so choose. I don't, but I could.
Right. Because you're not having to pay for toilets or AC. What is Grant always saying? Toilets, roofs, ACs, roofs repairs.
I think there's a cute way he says it.
There's a cute way where it's like da-da-da-da-da-da. Because again...
There's no phone calls. I'm not paying for, I'm not paying for property management. I'm not... Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. If it's vacant and they're renting it out, not to mention when your property manager rents it out, it's for a full month's rent. Yeah. If you're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, because the thing is so say Sekou is buying a house from you, your owner financed to him, and he's paying for it, and then all of a sudden his AC goes out, his heater goes out, his toilet goes out, and he calls you up, and you're like, oh, well I know a good plumber, you should call Roger, you should call whoever, you should call Jess. Yeah. They're like, well, that's your problem. It's like, no, I'm the bank right now. And that's going back to be the bank. That's where all the money, that's where all the power is at.
When I first
Sorry, Sekou, you got to take care of that yourself.
When I first got started, I was all about... it was the BRRRR Method back
the
then,
scorecard.
But I mean, it was before they called it the BRRRR Method, but that's what I was doing.
You're dating yourself.
Yes.
They started the BRRRR Method in 1985.
This is like 16 years ago. Yeah. And I mean, back then it was even easier to do it because I
Yeah.
could refinance out in like 2 weeks
Yeah.
after buying the property. And people are like, you could do that with my own appraiser that I handpicked.
What were you doing in 1999?
Oh, stop it. What was I really doing
Yeah.
in 99?
Yeah.
I guess I was in college.
Amanda, when were you born?
Stop it.
I was born in 99.
We've already had this.
I know,
I'm
it's
like
age,
I'm
yeah.
a whole person who can drink older than she is.
That's awesome. No, but anyway, back to the conversation. It's notes versus is landlording or rentals. My position is the same with wholesaling or sub two or buy and hold or fix and flip. To be a real estate investor, you need to be diverse. You need to dabble in everything. That being said, you can pivot when times are kind of yelling at you saying, hey, don't do that.
All right.
Like being a landlord right now would suck. That being said,
Would it though?
but
It's not everybody.
I'm just saying, but I was about to get there. Right now it would suck. But if you wanted to become a landlord, say now, about February, March, when all this blows over, and if you were able to buy all that stuff, you're going to do pretty good.
But you can also do
Maybe.
You can also turn in an owner financing. I have agreed. Yes, I do have some rentals now, but they're all short-term rentals, which I feel is genius, especially because they're not subject to the eviction laws. I can go evict them.
For the owner finance?
No, for my short-term rentals.
Oh, short-term rentals. Yeah.
Right. So I don't do any long-term regular rentals.
I don't know enough about those rules though.
Yeah, no. It's
They short-term rentals. Are you talking about Airbnb?
yeah, it's like Airbnb.
Oh, okay,
Short-term
'cause-
rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, any of those.
I thought the short-term rental. Again, I'm not familiar with it, so it's
Well,
like
I'm calling it a short-term rental because it's kind of like if you have a soda and you call it, everything's called Coke,
Right.
which everybody's calling them Airbnbs, but they're not.
But it's essentially if you go to a hotel and you book out for a month, after the month's done, it's not like you could claim, oh, well,
I live here.
I
now.
live here now. Yeah, because it's a hotel.
It's a hotel.
Got it.
So that's the same premise. So
Yeah.
again, I'm not subject to those eviction laws. So yeah, I love that I don't have a single thing where the tenant could stop
I wonder
paying me.
though if you could. I don't know. That's interesting in my head where you can go like, look, we're going to switch you to long-term Airbnb, but essentially it's long-term Airbnb, and after the 6 months,
Depends on the state that you're in.
Okay.
California will not, if they've been there 30 nights, if they've just been there, even if they didn't pay for 30 nights, but as soon as they've stayed that 30th night, they're not squatters. They actually live there and they have all the same rights as tenants.
oh my God,
It's awful.
California.
I mean, God bless Texas, seriously, that we
Currently.
will never have until we become California. I hope not. Anyways, so there are some advantages. One, appreciation, right? If I sell something on owner finance, and I found this a lot, right? Because I started really owner financing my portfolio in 2009. And the market was super low, but I was, of course, even selling them higher than what I should have been. And then lo and behold, I've got all these people who owe me like $70,000 on the note, and the property is worth $150,000. And had I continued to be a landlord for 10 years, if I had been lucky enough to keep them all, and nothing catastrophic happened.
But again, that's that conversation of shoulda, woulda, coulda, and as much as you got lucky on something, you could have gone the other direction.
Correct.
Because like say you buy a property and it sits there for a year and you don't do anything with it. You have I'm not a statistician and probability expert, but let's just say it's 50-50 that hey, something moves in next door that drastically increases the appreciation in the value of that house to where it more than doubles, triples, quadruples the value of that property. Or by the way, there was a crazy murder, suicide, et cetera, next door, and
Right.
it completely depreciates the entire neighborhood. Or worse yet, somebody came into your vacant house, did the murder inside the house.
So, case in
Those
point,
are exaggerations, but
I have an Airbnb that's down kind of, where Lower Greenville ends? Kind of, and there's the homeless shelter down there. And then there's a big park where the homeless hang out. Well, that's like 3 doors away. You know, and it wasn't such a big deal, say 3 years ago, but it's become kind of a big deal down there. So
I love how here I am talking about like murder, suicide, just craziness, and you're like, you know what's worse than that? Homeless people. Ew.
It's not.
Wow,
No,
Kristin.
No.
Wow.
No.
It's Christmas time. Where's your heart?
Well, again, they don't want. They don't want to be inside. That's fine. They don't. You know, there's people helping them out, but there's a shelter there. But they're all kind of out and
I love
possibly
putting you on the
going through
spot.
trash.
It's so much fun.
I know. I'm sorry. That came out wrong before. Damn it.
Anyway, it's probably a good time to wrap up because we've been. Oh, go ahead.
We got a couple. Appreciation is one.
Oh, well, come on, hit me.
The depreciation of the asset for tax benefits. Yes, I would give that as well. But if you talk to any landlord who holds a property over 30 years, until that thing is paid off, you know, it's really like a savings.
Yeah.
It's like a savings account. And if you have a tenant if your tenants move out every year, you're losing money. Because you have a whole month that they weren't there, you've got make-readies.
I think the big thing that it has on anything else, rentals, is the whole air of legacy for your future generations. But the reality is money is legacy enough.
Well, when you start, you know, it also depends on the age of the house. You know, you're buying a brand new property. Well, in 20 years, all of a sudden that stuff, you know, it deteriorates and you've got to completely be redoing it, which is why I like owner finance, because you've got homeowners that are really taking good care of those homes in most cases. Not all cases, but most cases.
Right.
So, yeah, it's, you know, there is definitely a huge debate on that. And I think it comes back to what you said. You need to not put all your eggs in one basket. In the last 12 months, I've wholesaled, I've subject-to'd, I've owner financed, I've bought notes, sold notes. Airbnb'd, you know, so I've done all of that in the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just goes back. If you're going to be a real estate investor, you need to be prepared to very much diversify and not focus just on one thing.
And that ultimately gives us back to this conversation of getting into notes, where I think note investing is kind of, a lot of people do it obviously, but it's still that, there's still a mystique behind it. There's still like an air of, do people really do this? You know, because like there's really not any like sexy note investors on Instagram or anything like, oh, sorry. Case in point, exactly.
You know, it's not that it's, I still
But
get.
I didn't mean the actual looks. I meant like the content's
No,
not sexy.
because you know what? It's not sexy. What I do is not
1
sexy.
+
Well,
1
except,
= 2.
yeah, I make money and I talk about math and I do numbers and spreadsheets. There's nothing sexy about what I do. There's no. I mean, you want to watch me work? It's boring.
Yeah, it's a
boring as
spreadsheet.
hell. It's
PJ's in a spreadsheet.
Exactly, and that's you know.
Whereas like wholesaling, I can go into a house and like, oh, look at the murder, suicide, blood spatter. Look at the brains on the floor, dead body in the corner. Oh, stress seller, let me buy your house. Oh, you want 100? I'll give you 20. Sexy.
It is. Well, that little ugly house part, but the reveal, right?
Yeah.
Going, hey, this is what I bought. Remember this
Yeah.
house? Here's what it turned into. People love that. People are like, oh, I could totally do that.
Yeah.
Which, in reality, most people can't do that, and it's not as easy as what it looks, you know, and it takes a lot of time. But
Yeah, I think for me, the difference between, say, like traditional real estate investing versus note investing is, I say with like wholesaling and flipping and that type of real estate, is your work ethic must outweigh your knowledge.
yes,
Not
Yeah,
I said that
no.
wrong.
Well,
You
that's
have to have a high work ethic,
Right.
because if you have a high, oh, let me study, but I'm not going to actually do, you'll never go there. Versus notes, you have to know what the F you're doing, but you still have to have a little push to do it.
I get asked.
Can you translate what I just said? Because I know I messed up
so
on
you
that.
do. You have to have. You also do. I mean, anything in real estate investing or when you're an entrepreneur, you have to have that drive.
Yeah.
You have to get out of bed every day and go, this is what I'm going to accomplish. But yes, there's a lot more, I would say, education and knowledge that goes into note investing. Yes, I mean, how did I learn this? By originating my own through owner finance.
Yeah.
But then learning all of the intricacies of what pure note investors are looking for. What am I looking for when I go in to buy a note? Because I don't want to buy a crappy house and then owner finance it.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make mainly is like if you are able to talk a seller into making a contract, or not making to signing a contract, you can print a contract off the internet and kind of fiddle faddle all the way through. And afterwards, you're like, holy crap, I just got a contract. I have no clue what I'm doing now. I think it's done correctly.
I wrote my own contract.
You're not going to be able to fake that with a banker.
No, you can't. Well, and yeah, if you're talking about a banker, if I'm talking about like picking up just from a regular, I get a shocked email almost once a week that says, hey, just caught one of your videos. I didn't even know you could sell a note or buy a note. And it's an every week thing where I have to talk to somebody not only to just educate on the intricacies of buying and selling notes, but that you can do it at all.
Well, I think that's perfect time for a quick sales pitch. PassingNotesGroup.com, button number 4. There we go. If you go there, Kristin has a mentorship group where she holds your hand and teaches you all the things about the real estate note investing world, A to Z,
Yeah.
Z to
And I also bring
1,000.
in non-performing notes for sale.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want more information, you can go to PassingNotesGroup.com or hit up Kristin in the DMs on the Instagrams.
On the Instagrams.
Yes.
Who's dating themselves now?
Well, clearly
I think my mom calls it the Instagrams.
Well, I guess you could say I'm aging myself and dating myself because single ladies, single.
Above a certain
Obviously.
age. I hear Betty White's single.
Oh, God. Oh, hey, that woman, she's got bank and she's about to kick the bucket. That's my go-to woman.
Oh my God, did you just say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Put in like, with her, it'd be like maybe 3 months.
I hope not.
She ain't gonna, less.
Long live Betty
She's got
White.
listen, she's got like 2 weeks. It is 2020. She ain't making it out of 2020.
Oh, the horror. Everybody loves Betty.
I'm not saying I love Betty too. I'm just saying I would love her more for that money.
Now it's time.
Because then I could buy some notes.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Anyway, we'll see y'all later.